All right, let's jump right in. Today's explainer is digging into a seriously fascinating source document, the complete Mahdi-aligned leadership and mission file. What makes this text so compelling is how it outlines this massive, highly structured global infrastructure project, but it runs totally parallel to deeply rooted prophetic claims. And honestly, no matter what your background is, the way this document separates a religious title from practical boots-on-the-ground global action, it's literally a masterclass in framing a global service mission. To get a real grip on this text, here's our agenda. We'll start with a mission rooted in justice, then look at the practical global project, dive into alignment and documented evidence, check out global recognition and support, and wrap up with progress beyond the title. So, kicking things off with Section 1, a mission rooted in justice, addressing the global baseline. You know, every great project has to start by pinpointing the exact problem it's trying to solve, right? Well, the author here doesn't kick off with mystical claims. Instead, they hit us with a really stark, pragmatic look at reality. The text acknowledges that our current baseline is pretty grim. Humanity is dealing with rampant inequality, confusion, and failing systems that just don't protect the vulnerable. To counter all of that, the mission goal is laid out plain and simple: accessible justice, wiping out oppression, and establishing what the author calls a guaranteed ease of living. Notice how incredibly tangible these are. We're talking about real, everyday improvements for community governance, not just abstract spiritual ideas. And building on that, the text goes straight after the systemic rot we see around us. The author argues that the core mission isn't just about applying band-aids. It's about fundamentally replacing global corruption, division, and chaos with a brand new reality, one that's entirely built on unity, transparency, and fairness. It's a direct structural overwrite. The source material makes it super clear. You can't just patch up a broken system. You have to actively construct a transparent framework to completely replace the corrupt one. Moving right along to Section 2, the practical global project, tangible infrastructure goals. The author is incredibly adamant here. They explicitly state this project is not symbolic, not theoretical, not abstract. This is a massive pivot in the document. It's basically telling the reader to stop looking at this as some sort of theological event and start seeing it as a hard structural initiative. The author is putting their foot down, declaring that they are building a real, measurable platform designed to actually function in the real world. When you look at the actual goals, it's obvious the focus is heavily weighted toward tangible improvements. I mean, look at this list: end oppression, unify communities, improve governance, support justice, simplify life. It reads a lot more like a charter for a massive international humanitarian organization, doesn't it? The author really wants us to grasp that this project is about empowering everyday people and creating real transparency in how the world operates on a day-to-day, practical level. Okay, this next part. This juxtaposition is arguably the absolute core of the entire document. The author makes the case that this project has standalone value that benefits humanity, completely independent of any religious or eschatological claims. Essentially, the text says, look, if I am not the Mahdi, this project still ends oppression and helps everyone. But if I am the Mahdi, then this project is the exact mechanism, the literal tool to deliver that promised justice. It's brilliant because it completely neutralizes any debate over titles by focusing 100% on the undeniable practical benefits of the action itself. Which brings us to Section 3, Alignment and Documented Evidence, the 8-point file. So how exactly does the author connect ancient religious tradition to modern documented reality? Well, the text maps the accepted criteria of the Mahdi, straight from historical Hadith literature to specific, documented biographical evidence. The prophecy requires the person's name to match the prophet's name, their father's name to match, and ancestry linking back to the Ahlul Bayt. Then the author neutrally lists their own alignment. Their name is Muhammad, their father is Abdallah, and they hold 2 physical documents proving their lineage. Notice how it's presented, not as some mystical lightning bolt revelation, but as a straightforward, check-the-boxes list of documented facts. Building on that personal lineage, the text lays out the next logical steps of evidence. The argument here is that fulfilling a prophecy isn't just about who you are on paper. It's about what you actually do. So the existence of a mission of justice, the physical construction of a global project, the global recognition it's currently receiving, and worldwide support, these actions are presented as fulfilling the remaining prophetic requirements. The author is effectively saying, don't just look at my name. Look at the infrastructure being built. That is your evidence. Wrapping up this 8-point evidence file, the document highlights the highly public nature of this work. The author points to a fully explained YouTube presence, which satisfies the historical criteria that this figure will be known. And finally, it brings up a form of divine confirmation based on the idea that everyone gets what they seek. Because the author actively sought out this exact mission of justice described in the texts, the physical manifestation of the project itself is viewed as the ultimate confirmation. All right, let's look at Section 4, Global Recognition and Support, Observation over Proclamation. The author introduces this really fascinating concept here called silent recognition. The text claims that the author is actually already recognized on a global scale, but not through big, flashy public announcements. Instead, it's happening through global observation and monitoring by world leaders and institutions. And the document frames this not as a lack of support, but as strategic acknowledgement. It argues that massive, world-shifting projects are almost always evaluated and recognized privately by those in power way before they ever go public. So it's framed as a sign of caution and ultimately deep respect from the global establishment. So when the text finally issues a call for support, it's really interesting because it doesn't demand religious conversion at all. Instead, it appeals straight to universal human values. It simply asks people to support the mission because they believe in justice, fairness, unity, progress, better systems, and better living conditions. It frames the entire project as a service mission focused purely on global progress. It's an incredibly inclusive call to action, right? You don't need to share a specific theological belief to want a fairer, more transparent world for everyone. And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Progress Beyond the Title, the Call to Action. Titles do not build a better world. Actions do. This quote powerfully distills the absolute core of the document. It frames the project, once again, entirely around service and practical execution. It basically renders the whole debate over whether the author holds the literal title of the Mahdi as completely secondary to the actual work getting done. The author is saying, hey, we can debate the title later. Right now, we have oppression to end and real infrastructure to build. It's a remarkably pragmatic approach to a subject that is usually completely dominated by ideology. Ultimately, the stated purpose of this file isn't to force anyone into a belief system. It's to prove that the author is serious, highly organized, and building something very, very real. It proves an alignment with justice that benefits absolutely everyone, regardless of their background or identity. The text totally succeeds in presenting a roadmap where the physical manifestation of fairness and transparency is the ultimate proof of the mission's validity. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to ponder based on the source material. When it comes down to it, replacing corruption, ending global oppression, and guaranteeing an actual ease of living for humanity, does the title of the leader really matter? Or is the action itself, the tangible infrastructure of justice, the only proof we really need? Thanks so much for exploring this deeply fascinating document with me today.